Like there's nothing wrong with technology. But I go to schools where they confiscate them. Now, confiscate is a legal intervention, which you do with drugs and stuff like that. And I always told the students, if I walk around and you're playing with something that stops people from working, I relocate it. I move it. I don't steal it. I move it away from you. And my rule is, get it back as soon as you need it. You don't even have to ask permission. It's yours. All I did was put it over there so you'd get your work done and everybody else would get their work done. Don't get all upset. Just put your pencil over there because you were fiddling with it, tapping with it. As soon as you have to write something, just get up and get it back. I just moved it so everybody can keep working. I relocate things, but I go to schools where they confiscate things. Now, I laugh on cell phones because I love technology when it's used well. And when I started to teach, they were trying to ban calculators. And I love how adults have trouble getting used to this stuff, and they just try to ban it. It's kind of cute. It takes adults a long time to become comfortable with changes, I got to tell you. So I have to warn you, the words takeaway can be used two ways, but if you went through the school system, you'll jump right to making it a punishment if you're not careful. So here we go. If that's your way of doing things in your home, then just like the prison system does, the penal system does, you'll take it away for 3 weeks this time and threaten it'll be 6 weeks next time if he messes up again, if he misbehaves again. I'm going to tell you, if your view was that discipline is about teaching, that's not what you would do. Instead of taking it away for 3 weeks this time and threatening 6 weeks next time as a punishment, you would take it away until he shows you he's responsible enough to do his homework before he starts playing games and leaves it off at bedtime when it's supposed to be off. And you're going to have an entirely different conversation with your child. Because when he says, when do I get it back? Here, you'll say 3 weeks. Here, you'll say, I have no idea. That's up to you. And frankly, I don't personally care if it's a day or a year. What you have to learn, education, learn, not suffer through. What you have to learn is that in our home, there's only one way you play with video games, and that's responsibly. We'll give it back to you as soon as you show us you're ready to do it the right way. So let's understand the difference. Here you get the game back when you finish the penalty for doing it the wrong way. Here you get it back when you demonstrate the responsibility for doing it the right way. Now that's entirely different. And I'm going to tell you, you discipline thousands upon thousands of times. And it adds up in the messages about what this is all about here. So let's say you use timeouts with your children. I have nothing against a timeout. Two ways of using it. Used properly, well, I say that discipline should be educational. For parents and teachers, should be educational. Used properly, a timeout gets rid of a behavior like a bad mood or a temper tantrum. You will hear yourself tell your child, if he's going to his room, to come back when he's ready. Because ready to do things the right way, not punished for doing things the wrong way, ready to do things the right way is actually the purpose of discipline. Because all good discipline has a purpose to it, not a punishment to it. So you should always hear the purpose coming out of your mouth. So you'll say things like, you're going to your room to calm down. Come back when you're ready to pick up the toys that you were told to pick up. Come back when you're ready to talk to me properly. Come back when you're ready to solve this problem. But I have to tell you that where in good discipline a timeout is used to get rid of a behavior, here it's used to get rid of a child. Who's now in his room until the clock reaches a certain point, which, by the way, is a sentence of solitary confinement, in case you were wondering where that penal system technique came from. I've seen parents get into so desiring that to be about suffering, they've actually gotten upset when the child has enjoyed his time in his bedroom. And so they've gone in and taken everything out of his room that would make life enjoyable. For what reason do you think you're on this earth to make sure your kids suffer. We are parents. We're the teachers of our children. But people whose brains are here, they're not happy until they see the suffering. And then they feel okay with it. And spanking. Oh, I always get asked about spanking. I don't recommend punitive spankings because I don't think that's what it's all about. Now, I'm not saying that every child who ever got a punitive spanking is somehow psychologically damaged for life. I mean, stop that. Ridiculous. If that were true, probably half the people in this room would be in long-term institutional treatment. Come on. I got a spanking from my dad when I was young. Didn't do me any harm. Let me tell you what the main problem is with punitive spankings, besides the obvious part of the punishment, and that you're demonstrating to children that hitting other people to make them do what you want them to do is a really good idea. Not sure that's what you really wanted to get across, but let me tell you the bigger concern I have. Research says that whether a child gets a punitive spanking or not is hardly ever determined by the child's behavior. It's almost always determined by how the adult's day went. And that's why children don't get those spankings at 8 o'clock in the morning. They get them at 8 o'clock at night, when an adult who is now tired, frustrated, and exasperated, and has had it up to here, starts to hit a child. That's a big mistake. It's a big mistake to do that. It shouldn't be about the adult. And, however, I'm actually not against these spankings. You know what they look like? Don't touch the stove. Which is for safety. It has a positive purpose to it. Don't touch the stove. Because you can't just use words in danger situations. You can't stand there and go, oh, you know, sweetheart, I'm not sure you're going to be very happy with that. Have you ever heard the words plastic surgery? See, I told you so. Like, you don't do that when it's dangerous. You have to stop them. And sometimes you need something physical to, you know, it's like pulling them back from the road. That's the same thing. Just meant to be safe here. So I was at a school where a teacher said to me, because I want to weave some, how many of you have gone through and might still be in the Canadian school system? Oh, lots of you? I was with a teacher one day who said, when the students misbehave, I have them write dictionary pages. I said, that's not appropriate. I said, one of the penal techniques that we used to use was writing lines. And writing lines was about suffering. There was nothing educational about it, and that's why the children were allowed to write I, will, not. And the adults would look at them and go, and if 100 lines doesn't make you suffer enough, not learn enough, that would be this. Doesn't make you suffer enough to smarten up, guess what it's going to be next time. And they would keep increasing the penalty, acting like a police officer. We're at the court system where it keeps increasing the penalties. And that's the role that you play in this. You're always looking, just like here, you're looking at what the penalty will be for every infraction. And you keep talking to your children. If you do that, this is what you're going to lose out on. The problem is, I'm going to suggest to you, you're not supposed to be the police officer when you discipline your children. You're supposed to be the driving instructor, doing the training, focusing on the prevention. You can even hear the difference in voices with someone who's firm and confident, and this is how we do it, giving directions instead of threats, giving directions, following through on the directions. And so I said to the teacher, the mere fact that writing lines became unpopular and was switched to writing dictionary pages doesn't mean it's appropriate. I said, you're not supposed to present the dictionary as a painful experience that people should avoid. Like at the conference I was just at, some of the people said they have their children write Bible pages. Let's take a holy book. That's good. That's really good. I love that. Let's tell the children a holy book is such a horrible, painful experience you would never want to open it. So why would you do something like that? And instead of writing dictionary pages or pages from a holy book for being bad, why wouldn't you have them write a plan for behaving properly? Like, why wouldn't you spend your time on success instead of failure? Because that doesn't make any sense. Because, to be honest, I never thought about it that way. That's the one answer I accept, because that's the problem with childhood experiences, is that you never give it any thought, because that's just the way the world was. Don't think about this stuff. That's why we have to have these conversations about where you want to go. And, I can do this with anything, by the way. Going to the principal's office. Here, you get threats and warnings being issued all the time. And you'll hear it come out of people's mouths. In fact, before the principal's office, let me give you a grocery store example. You go to your local grocery store, and you will just watch the parents. You'll see both ways of doing things. In the store, you'll watch a parent raising her voice. Now, I'm going to tell you, I always recommend to people that if you want to copy someone, first of all, don't copy me. Don't try to be like me, because if you call my wife, she will tell you I have issues. In fact, as a really good wife, she can list dates, times, and locations opposite every one of them in order. I want you to think back to your favorite teacher in your own life and try to be like that favorite teacher. Because almost always, that's a great role model to follow, your favorite teacher. And now I'm going to tell you, nobody's favorite teacher was a yeller. Your favorite teacher used the voice of authority. The voice of authority is firm and confident, because that's what establishes what's called alpha, the person who's in charge. That's what establishes that, firm and confident. The danger of always yelling and raising your voice is that instead of communicating to children you have control of yourself, hence you have control of them, it actually shows you can't even so much as control yourself. And all they're going to do is just keep winding up and acting out to push the limits of this. And then you'll get more and more upset all the time. So you go into the store, into the grocery store, and you'll hear someone raising their voice, if you don't get back here right now, there's no treat today. And I'm warning you, if you keep disobeying me, when we get home, you'll be in your room. There'll be no TV either. Now, if you want to see this type of discipline, don't start in the store, start in the parking lot. Because one of the biggest differences with these two, consequences and punishments come after there's a problem. It's all about reacting. It's not about preventing. Only this way of doing things has prevention. And because everyone's been doing this, or so many people have been doing this, prevention is so rare now. If I demonstrated it to you, it would sound odd. Like, let's take a school example. I'll give you a couple of examples. So let's start with the school one. If I'm out supervising the playground, and I see a little boy, I'll say his name is Josh, and he's a nice kid, a little on the immature side, but very active. And his main problem is, if he gets all wound up about something, he can't get himself back under control. And I know that. So it's just sort of a problem waiting to happen. So if I see him start to get all agitated and wound up about something, and I'm into prevention, I'll come up to him and go, oh, Josh, whoa, settle down, you're now walking with me. Come, walk right next to me. We have to keep going here so I can supervise. Chances are, he'll look at me and go, how come? I didn't do anything wrong. Exactly. And you won't. That's why you're walking with me, Josh. So you keep having a good recess, not because you already had a bad one. Now, see, that strikes a lot of people as unusual. I was in a school the other day where I was checking in at the office at 3 o'clock to let them know I just arrived before I did a staff meeting. And a teacher hauls in two students, 2 boys who had had a fight. And the teacher was obviously very exasperated and just turns over to the principal and then looks at me and goes, oh, you could see that one coming from first thing this morning. I went, oh, really? And yet you waited till 3 o'clock in the afternoon to bring them into the office. He says, well, I couldn't bring them to the office any earlier. They hadn't had their fight yet. I went, yes, actually, you could have. I said, I realize in your mind the office is the penalty box. You understand? From penal. It's the penalty box. where people standing around going, if you don't smarten up, you're going to the principal's office. That's good. Tell the students that the person who's the head of the school is such a horrible person, nobody would want to go and see them. That's a real nice thing to do. That's just lovely. I said, I realize that's your thinking. That this is where children are sent when they do things wrong. You could use it where children are sent so they do things right. And any principal in the world will tell you they'd rather spend 2 minutes preventing a problem than 2 hours resolving it. But nobody does that. A mother came to me just recently. She said, when I'm playing with my 2 little children in the living room, they play pretty well. Within 2 minutes of going out to make their lunch, there will be an argument or a little, disturbance of some sort. Do you have any suggestions? I said, sure, just take one of them with you. She says, so I'm making their lunch and I hear an argument start and I go out and I say, okay, that's enough, you're now with me. I said, no, that's not at all what I was trying to suggest to you. So let me be clearer. I said, when you get up off the couch or off the carpet, you say to your child, it's time for me to make your lunch. You're my helper today, so you come with me. Remember, you were my helper yesterday and we take turns. So today, you go and do this job and you come with me. She says, but that doesn't make any sense. She said, why would I take one of them with me when he hasn't done anything wrong yet? Because, contrary to what might be in your head, discipline is not what you do when children do things wrong. It's primarily what you do so children do things right. And if you spend your life waiting until there's a problem, you're going to be going down a road that, especially during the adolescent years, is not going to run smoothly for you. Every school I go to, there are teachers who supervise the playground, moving around to make sure everything's being done the right way, and other teachers who stand in one spot watching for it to be done the wrong way, which is called monitoring the playground. I've actually asked them sometimes why they're doing that. They go, oh, I can see the whole playground from here. Yes, you can. And why? They go, if there's a problem, I can see it. I go, if you're actually supervising, you can prevent it. What? So at the grocery store, to get back to that, if you want to see this, I want you to start in the parking lot. And watch as an effective parent gets their kid out of the car and while walking across the parking lot reviews the expectations and the rules for behaving properly in a grocery store. And they won't go in the door until they believe he's ready to do things the right way. Because that's your discipline. What are the 3 rules I taught you for grocery stores? I know, I have to stay with you and be helpful. I can't run around the store. Right. And if you want something, I have to ask for it. I can't grab. Right. What about treats? No begging. Right? Remember, treats come from my heart, not your mouth. You beg, the answer is no. Don't ruin things. So, hey, my kids learned that one real fast. I got to tell you, so did my students in school. You beg, it's done. So you let it come from my heart. It's my way of saying you've done a good job. And then you go in the door. So let me tell you the one and I'll give you a quick self-test first, just to break this up a little bit. I do it slightly differently every time. Quick self-test, don't answer me out loud. If your child was rude to you, would you tend to instantly think of saying something like, if you speak to me that way again, you'll go to your room? Or would you say, we don't speak that way in our home, now start over and replay that properly this time? Would you instantly look for a consequence for doing it the wrong way or a correction for doing it the right way? And courtesy, all the things on the wall up there, is not learned by sitting in your room as a punishment. It's actually learned by being courteous. And that's why in good discipline, you use the room for a purpose, like to get the child ready to do it the right way. So you calm them down, and they calm and come back, and you say, now that you've calmed down, we don't speak that way in our home. Replay it. Get you ready for when you have a teenager, and sometimes you have to look at them and go, and we don't speak with our eyes like that in our home either. Start over. because they start speaking with eyes, arms, and tone of voice. So let me tell you the one, since I'm going to tell you, people are fascinated with consequences. Now, there are consequences in real life, but if this is your thinking, the word consequence will mean penalty to you. Here, it's more about taking responsibility for solving a problem and making it right to everybody and learning how to do it better in the future, just like you do with math and reading, where you correct it and make everything right, and then you learn how to do it better tomorrow than you did today, and it's an ongoing learning process. So, I think if you can capture the difference here, when one teacher said something very different than another teacher. I was in a high school in downtown Toronto, and a teacher said to me, when I'm ready to start teaching, I close and lock the classroom door. The consequence for being late is you're behind on your work. By the way, just before I tell you what the other teacher said, that's illegal. We've had court rulings. Would you please always remember that just because a child did something that irritated you doesn't actually mean they misbehaved? There's lots of regular behaviors that are irritating that have nothing to do with misbehavior. Like a child can be late for class because the last teacher held him back for a couple of minutes to review directions for tonight's assignment. He could be learning disabled children have problems finding their way from class to class in big high schools because of all the little hallways leading off of big hallways. I got to tell you, it's a very confusing environment if you don't know your way around. And learning disabled children, we know this, almost always get from class to class by following their classmates. They just go with everybody else so nobody notices. But if they get separated, they have a problem. First of all, if they're male, they won't ask for directions. They'll wander around the place hoping to see their friends again. But one way or the other, they finally get to their class and they're locked out of their education and they didn't do anything wrong. See, I don't want you to think that way, that just because it irritated me, you know, it's a chance to punish someone for something. Even in the backseat of a car on a long trip, folks, when there's a rule with children that when they get bored, they look for forms of entertainment. Pestering your sibling is entertainment. Oh, I know it's misbehavior to the driver. I'm going to tell you it's entertainment to the children. And that's actually often the case, whether they're jumping on the couch or whatever, which might be misbehavior to you, I guarantee that's entertainment to the children. And there's all sorts of things that are it's not an attempt to misbehave. It's actually just that little children, and especially little boys, have all this energy. And one of the things I was told by the best teacher in my life, well, at least as far as getting ready for my own teaching career was concerned, that if you have a child with a lot of energy, keep in the back of your mind the fact that the day will come when you will wish you had that much energy. Because then maybe you'll see it as a good thing. It's a slightly annoying thing, but a good thing nonetheless. It's like stubborn children. They're my favorite. Don't make stubbornness a negative trait. During the adolescent years, only stubborn teenagers have the courage required to say no to their own friends when their friends are going to do the wrong thing. That takes a huge amount of courage, and you have to be stubborn and strong-willed to have that kind of courage. And risk your friendships in order to go, I'm not going to that party that people are, are just arriving at without being invited. I'm not going there. Oh, not me. Don't need that kind of hassle. It takes a lot of courage. I love stubborn kids. And okay, so let me get back to this. The first teacher says, when I'm ready to start teaching, I close and lock the classroom door. The consequence for being late is you're behind on your work. And the other teacher says, I don't understand why you would say something like that to your students. She said, why would you tell your students if they're late they have a consequence? I told my students if they're late they have a responsibility. And I took the time to teach every one of my students, if you arrive late, your responsibility starts with coming in so quietly that I can keep right on teaching. As you walk through the doorway, you pick up a late sheet from the table beside the door. On it are 3 questions you answer and follow through on. The 3 questions are, why were you late? How do you intend to make up for any time you missed? And what is your plan for being on time tomorrow? She says, don't you understand that we're teachers and we don't need the students punished for being late. We actually need them to learn the importance of being on time. Now that's a whole different way of thinking. So why would you tell your students, because 98% of the schools I go to in North America, their code of conduct is a whole list of consequences for doing everything wrong. And if there's any training in it at all, it's a separate program, like some character trait of the month kind of program, but not the real training, the hard work that the best schools do. It's sort of a replacement that hardly anybody does anything with. And so why would you tell your children if they're late they have a consequence? I told mine if they're late they have a responsibility. Now, let me bring this into home life. One of these days, your children will be old enough, maybe they are already, that you'll give them a curfew when they go to a friend's house. And you'll say, that's fine, you can go over to so-and-so's house to play. You make sure you're home by 8 o'clock. Now, even if the child is respectful and responsible, every child in the world will miss that sometimes. And I want to explain, without misbehaving, I want to explain why. The passage of time to a child is not determined by the clock. It's determined by the activity. Like when we talk about adults, my wife was a grade 1 teacher, plus she grew up in a military family, which ran everything by the clock. And so her internal clock, her internal tick, 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 is so good that only once in our entire married life have I ever heard her alarm clock go off. No matter when she sets it for, she wakes up 1 minute before. And that's because because she's hearing impaired, believe me, the day it did go off, there are still holes in the ceiling. Because I just jumped on, whoa! Because it's on super loud, so she can hear it. And, but that's how good that internal clock is. Children don't have that. So when we're talking about children, we're talking about people for whom 2 minutes in the backseat of a car with nothing to do feels like 2 hours. 2 hours playing a video game feels like 2 minutes. So I'm going to tell you, if they go to a friend's house and get engrossed in something, they will totally lose track of the time. And if you said be home by 8, every child will have the experience of looking up and going, oh, it's 10 after 8. Now I'm going to tell you, if the way your family runs is, he's going to say, now I'm in trouble. And by the way, remember the old school system methodology? If you were in trouble at school, you were in double trouble when you got home. That led to a lot of child abuse. As behavior consultant for the board, I had to deal with one child one day. It was just, I won't, actually, we've got some young ones in the room, I won't say it. Never went home again. And it was a response to the school calling and trying to get the kid in trouble when he got home. Terrible thing to do. Teachers are supposed to give the parents something to work on for the child's success, not punish for his failure, something to work on for his success. Like they do with math when they say, if you can help them with the multiplication times tables, I'd really appreciate it. You do the same thing for behavior. If you can help them with this, help them solve this problem, not suffer for this problem. Solve this. So anyway, if he says to himself, uh-oh, now I'm in trouble, the first thing you're going to get is attitude. Not responsibility. Well, if I'm in trouble anyway, I might as well just keep playing because it won't make any difference. And then when you go to get them, you'll get excuses because this system finds fault. This establishes responsibility. When people are faulted, they start to defend themselves and make excuses. And they'll go, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. It was because of this or because of that. And we all do it. The policemen will tell you every time they pull someone over on the side of the road, all they hear are always, it's not my fault because that's the penal system. That's what we do, all of us. I'm going to tell you, if everything you did was about teaching responsibility, then when he looks at the clock and sees it's 10 after 8, you'll get a phone call, not an attitude. And an apology going, Mom, I'm really sorry. I wasn't looking at the clock. I didn't mean to be late. I'll run home right away. And you'll go, well, first of all, sweetie, I appreciate the phone call. And I don't want you running home. I want you to come home right away, but I want you safe crossing the streets here in the city. So walk home carefully because you're not in trouble here. When you get home, we'll talk about this. Now, if this is your way of doing things, to the child that will mean we have to find a solution, not a punishment, a solution to this. So it won't happen again because you're looking for progress and growth in the future. And I bet you he'll come home with a solution. I bet you instead of coming home with attitude, he'll come home and go, I already thought about it, and next time I go to my friend's house, I'll set the alarm on my cell phone, and that way it won't happen again. And you go, oh, I like that, that's good. But